We had upsets. We had a top-ranked instant classic in 8-man football, and now it's Rocky Moline week. Mitch, what else is there to say? Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about it.
Talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome back to View from the West podcast, your podcast talking about high school football in Illinois on the western side of the state. We're covering the Western Big Six, the Three Rivers Athletic Conference, the Lincoln Trail Conference, the Northwest Upstate Illini 11-man and 8-man. I'm Greg Armstrong. I'm joined, as always, by Mitch Stormer, the man behind the wheel on Friday nights on Twitter. Mitch, I'll ask you how your Friday night was, because I certainly don't want to ask a Notre Dame fan how his Saturday was. So how was Friday?
Yeah. Look, we can talk about Sunday if you like. We can talk about the Bears all day, no problem. I'll tell you, on Friday night, my fingers were tired. It was an active night. Back into it, I missed a week. So back at it, a lot of action going on. Shout out to a lot of people who sent in scores. We were missing a couple of updates from some things. So shout out to the fans out there that follow us that were at some of the games, like Knoxville was one. I think I can't remember the one off the top of my head, but shout out to all of our loyal fans who can provide that stuff when we aren't getting updates elsewhere. So appreciate it.
Certainly plenty of action to talk about, a couple of new uniforms to talk about that we've discovered this week. So Mitch, a lot to get into. We want to thank everyone who listens, who's been spreading the word. Mitch, we had somebody on Twitter saying they love what the NUICfootball.com does, and he wished that the Lincoln Trail and other conferences had that, and we were able to speak up and say, hey, we provide that content every week. So credit to the NUIC, because that's credit well deserved. Kyle does a great job of covering that conference and covering small school football in general. But yeah, I'm glad that we can hopefully fill that extra niche inside of the Lincoln Trail and the Three Rivers and the Western Big Six when you get up into the bigger schools. So to everyone who listens, thank you so much. Spread the word, like we said. If you like what we're doing here and you want to support View from the West, we have a couple ways you can do that now. First, you can be a sponsor. If you have a local business that you want to promote, reach out to us. Let's talk. You can contact us at viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. We have several different options to jump on board. We would love to promote your business and have you promote local high school football. If you don't have a local business or don't have a business you want to promote, but you still want to support what we're doing here, head over to PayPal. Mitch, it's now as easy as going directly to paypal.me/viewfromwestpod. So paypal.me/viewfromwestpod. If you didn't memorize that, it's okay. It's pinned as our top tweet on our Twitter account right now. So please consider helping us out. This is a passion for us. We love what we're doing. We're certainly not trying to get rich doing this, but there are expenses that come along with a podcast, and not to mention a little bit of time commitment here that we end up getting wrapped up in, which is great. We love it, but we appreciate our listeners. Any way you can provide support, monetary or not, just spread the word. Keep us growing, and we'll be back week after week talking about what's going on. So speaking of what's going on, Mitch, we start with our headlines from week number 3. We call them our viewpoints. Mitch, maybe your viewpoint isn't necessarily on the field action, but it was a pretty cool Friday night at the Score, WQAD.
Yeah, and I'll leave it to you after this to kind of follow up on it. But watching the Score, kind of got some word ahead of time that our old friend Dan Pearson was going to be the guest griller. And for any listeners who are not familiar, Dan Pearson is a legend in the Quad City media history. I mean, he started the Highlight Zone. He really brought what you see now with the Highlight Zone, with the Score, what they do on Channel 4. All of that kind of started with, Dan Pearson's mindset and his vision for this. So, Greg, you and I both worked with him back in the day. And so to see all you guys together, I took a picture of it and I tweeted it out. It was Cuffler, it was Stocking, it was Randazzo, it was DP, and it was you. And it was just really kind of a nostalgic thing. It brought me back to, I believe that was the fall of 2006. Yeah, 2006. And I think I've told this story before. I think really I think it was our first episode. I might have told this story. You know, I wasn't a communications major. I wasn't in that building. But a mutual friend of ours in Dustin Renwick had said, you know, hey, they're looking for people for the Highlight Zone this year. And obviously as a former player, I was well aware of what it was and couldn't think of anything cooler to do. And that's how we get started. And I remember that first night, I think Terry Swales let us into the building. And then, you know, walking down that old hallway by the production room and over to the sports desk and just walking in and seeing Dan Pearson there, it was like, I can't believe I'm standing right here right now. So that's just how big of an impact that he was, you know, for me growing up. He was just such a huge personality on TV that you saw, you know, every night if you watched the news or certainly every Friday with the Highlight Zone. So so cool to see all of you guys together. And I think Dazzo said it, you know, that was the first time that all of you guys, and at least him had been on screen with DP before. So really cool, really enjoyed watching it. You know, he's still got it. He's still the best. No offense to anybody else, but he's still the best. And because I heard the Instant Reacts pod, I'm just going to say the name Matt Randazzo just one more time, just for so I know that I'm good.
He's listening to this while he's running right now, and he probably just ran off the road. He probably doesn't believe that Mitch Stormer dropped the name Matt Randazzo in there. He's going to be excited. But no, getting back to your point, I mean, Kuffler said it, you know, on set that Dan Pearson not only kind of started what is Friday night football coverage in the Quad Cities area, but he had such a huge impact on all of us that were there, on you, on so many other people, such a positive influence. And I think for me, I covered high school sports a little bit in college, but it wasn't until I got here that I really discovered that passion or the way that Dan approached, you know, a Friday night, and kind of learning that every school, every program, every team has a story, and they all have fans that are excited for you to be there, and they can't wait to go home and watch, not just see the play on the field, but to see the band that was featured in the cutaways or in the opening to the show, or the cheerleaders or the parents or anybody. Is all the atmosphere. And I think that's more even than football on the field. It's every Friday night. I love going to big school, small school, anything in between, and just seeing local people from their community coming together to be in one place on a Friday night. And that's where the action is. That's where people want to be. And that's where my passion comes from. And it comes from what Dan kind of instilled in us.
Oh, and the other thing too is, and people who are listening don't quite understand it unless you've been through it. And we've talked about it, and I'm sure we've mentioned it before, but how chaotic Friday nights are for those stations, you know, and to put on the shows like The Score, the Highlight Zone, wherever it be, just how chaotic that is. Maybe not so much anymore now with technology, but back then certainly. But there was always such a calming presence when DP was around. It was like, it's gonna be fine. Like we got it. We know what we're doing. So just an incredible person. Glad to see that he's still around, but glad to see that he's still doing his thing. And again, it was just really, really cool to see everyone together on Friday.
Yeah, if you want to go back, anybody who's interested could go back and watch the replay of that show at WQAD.com, or you could go to WQAD on YouTube, and each episode of The Score is posted weekly on YouTube. They stream it live, and then it stays up there posted on YouTube.
Yeah, if you watch on YouTube, you get the glory of hot mics on a commercial break, and so you can always hear what's going on, and you can hear Dazzo specifically trying to steer the ship a little bit and make sure everyone knows what they're going to be doing as soon as the cameras come back on. So that was cool to see, and it again, a lot of nostalgia brought me back to those nights, and a lot of fun.
That is certainly a look behind the curtain when you're hearing the chatter between commercial breaks, and they keep it clean. You know, I think I haven't heard any anything really bad, so that's good. No. I think they know they're still on during those breaks. So anyway. Well, Mitch, I think I'll leave it at that. I think that's my viewpoint too. It was a really great night, covering high school football, and they're all fun, but that one was a little extra special. So anyway, let's jump into football on the field. The Western Big Six, the marquee matchup: Moline versus Quincy. Moline comes away with the big win, 34-20. Mitch, Moline has now won 28 over Quincy in their last 35 meetings. And man, did they do it just with a bruising run game. I got to give you credit, Mitch. That was kind of your insight into that game, was which team can establish the run and really do it effectively. Holy cow. That, to say Moline did that is an understatement. They just pounded Quincy on the ground.
Yeah, really, really efficient game here for Moline. As you mentioned, just this punishing, bulldozing ground game. The rushed for over 500 yards on Friday night. They were able to capitalize on a few crucial, timely Quincy mishaps. But regardless, they earned the win here. Great win for Moline. Riley Fuller had 279 yards and 3 scores to really pace that attack. And again, we've seen it from Fuller the past couple of seasons. And again, it goes back to, I think, what we talked about in the preseason. This was a team that was probably in a bit of trying to figure out their offensive identity. You know, when you lose Alec Ponder, when you lose Matthew Bailey, and more of a passing offense, you wondered how they were really going to, rebuild that. We knew that they were going to be good on the ground, and they certainly showcased it on Friday.
Yeah. On the opposite side, Moline's defense really kept an explosive Quincy offense in check for most of the game. But you still got to look at, man, Braden Little is going to be putting up some huge numbers in the course of his career. He's only a sophomore. He threw 20 for 31 for 279 yards against a pretty good Moline defensive attack. You had Gregory Quince go for 121 yards, and sophomore Tykel Hammers had 6 receptions for 103 yards. The real bummer of this game was Jarius Rice, who'd been a standout in the first couple weeks. He did leave this game with injury, so we don't know his status moving forward. But, that's a piece that they certainly hope is around in weeks, sooner than later, because they already have Aiden Byquist, who's down this year with injury for the year. But overall, I still think this Quincy team they're going to surprise a few teams along the way here, but they just ran into a really good Moline team that was really ready to go in this one.
Yeah, and you talked about their defense, which deservedly so, including Grant Sibley, who's a quarterback on the other side of the ball, had a clutch interception for the Maroons with about 8 minutes left. Following that interception, and this is more of kind of how the game went for Moline, Moline took that interception and turned it into a 16-play, 76-yard drive where no play or no rush, at least, went for more than 7 yards. So you're talking about just a grind and just burning that clock. I don't remember specifically if they scored on that last drive, but regardless, chewed up a lot of clock, chewed up a lot of yards, and sealed the win here.
And that's exactly, in that situation, that's exactly what you want to do. I mean, that's well executed. I mean, obviously that's what you want to coach into your players, but they got executed, and they certainly did on that one. That's a great job. Mitch, before we move along from Moline, we got to talk about Matthew Bailey. What an impact he is making at the University of Illinois. He scored his first collegiate touchdown and had an interception on Saturday, recovering a fumble in the end zone on a muffed punt in the Illini win over Virginia. Such a cool story for, an athlete in Matthew Bailey that I think kind of took a chance on going to Illinois and going to a big time program and seeing what can happen, a Division I, Big Ten school, taking his chances and kind of betting on himself. And it certainly is paying off so far.
Yeah. And since he got there, and obviously had a bummer of an end to his career with the Maroons in the playoffs last season, but from Coach Bielema and players there, you have heard nothing but good things since day one. And they really anticipate him to be an impact player moving forward, not only this season, but in his career as a whole. So really cool to see a local star making a name for himself at the highest level.
Yep. Well, let's move along to other action in the Western Big Six. Sterling gets the win 48-21 over Galesburg. The Golden Warriors struck first. They struck early and often in this one. They built a comfortable lead, never really looked back. Open the game, JP Schilling connects with Isaiah Mendoza for a 30-yard strike. Then it's AJ Kested on the ground going 44 yards. Second play of the game to put Sterling up early. Galesburg would respond. Tristan Legate with a pass to Mikey Eicher would tie it up at 7. But the Warriors would score on their next 3 possessions. That really put this game out of reach. Mitch, talk about a well-balanced Sterling team. They got AJ Kested doing great work on the ground. and they have JP Schilling and Cale Ryan, who we'll talk about in a minute here, also be able to run and make some throws. That this is a dangerous Sterling team if they keep things rolling in the right direction here.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention Antonio Tablante because I don't believe he played in this game. We had gotten some word early on, Greg, before this game that there might be some injury news. We're not going to speculate, on what that was, but yeah, just on the three guys that did play in this one, like you said, Kested, Schilling, and Cale Ryan, they're just such a dynamic trio, combined for 6 scores in this game. All told, 267 yards on the ground, 96 yards passing. This is just such a good Sterling offense. But let's take it to the other side of the ball, Greg, because this is a Galesburg team that can score. Tristan Leggett's a really good player, but the Warrior defense came up with 4 turnovers on Friday. So when you have that sort of 1-2 punch and talking about offense and defense there, Sterling's going to be really hard to beat if they're playing at that level.
Yeah, I think when you look at Galesburg, I think they still have some talent from last year, obviously names we talked about a year ago, but they also lost a lot. So I think maybe there's still some pieces they're trying to figure out in this mix of, they do have some talent. Like I said, I think that there's still, some playmakers, and they're making plays, but just not quite enough against Sterling. And also when Sterling's forcing the turnovers like that, they're rolling along. Their offense is too hard to stop at that point.
Yeah. Were you at this game, Greg?
I was, yes.
So you saw the Silver Streaks uniforms up and close.
I did. I saw them firsthand. Yeah, they look good. Very Raiders-esque, kind of look. Yep. It's a good, it's good. I like the pants it's a Nike set, and the pants are very similar to what Sterling has. I think they might be almost the exact same, just with with the gray and the black and the white look. The helmet's really cool. I love the train track down the middle, down that center stripe. I think there's potential to add a logo on each side of the helmet.
Yeah, but, I was going to say that too. I think I said last week that I hadn't really seen the look yet, so that's changed now. But I'm with you. I think if they add that streak back or that bolt, whatever it was, might add a little something. But it is a great look. It's certainly different from what Galesburg's been doing in years past, but more adhering to that Silver Streak name.
Yep, absolutely. Mitch, let's get into one of the other huge games in the Western Big Six. I think me and you both agreed this game would have a lot of impact down the road in conference standings, in playoff implications. Geneseo gets the win at United Township, 36-13. Maple Leafs never trailed in this one. They took advantage of United Township mistakes, and they come away with the big road win. Mitch, I'm really impressed with what the Maple Leafs did here.
Yeah, this is more of the Geneseo that we know, right? Of years past, maybe not so much recently, not to take anything away from what they've been doing, but the way that they're winning, the way that they're playing on both sides of the ball, that's what, made Geneseo back in the day. So good to see them back in this one. UT, again, we've seen it this season, running into issues with turnovers and penalties. They're timely, that they're taking away big plays, big momentum. Three either turnovers or penalties either erase a first down or a score. And Geneseo capitalizing. And against a team like that, you just can't do that. But all the credit to Geneseo. They led 24-6 at the break. Connor Helke, big game, 116 yards, 3 scores for a team Maple Leafs. And again, this sounds like Geneseo. 42 rushes, 229 yards.
Yeah, on the other side, Matthew Kelly continues to do great work. He finishes with 100 yards passing and 100 yards rushing, just not enough to get him into the end zone more often. They only came out with 13 points in the end there. But Mitch, for Geneseo, let's talk about, do we have maybe a play of the year candidate? I don't know if we've handed out play of the year in years past, but is this already on your list here?
Yeah, it is. This was early. This was in the second quarter, but they were kind of in no man's land a little bit. They're on the 37, on the UT 37. So, if you're Iowa, you're punting from there. If you're a good team, you're not. So again, I don't know their kicking situation, but that's what, a 54-yarder. So can't do that. It's too close to punt, but they're on fourth and 14 from the UT 37. They opt not to punt and decide to pull off a play that they had just practiced this week, a hook and ladder. Listeners, you know it, you've seen it, you love it. From their quarterback Weller threw it to Calvin Pettit. And then he just a perfect toss to him, and then just that timely pitch. That's what's always key there, right? That timely pitch to Jaden Wenzero. And he took it the rest of the way, 37 yards for a touchdown. That put the Leafs up 21-0. So yeah, really, really cool play, executed to perfection. What a time to call that in the second quarter, and just put all the momentum on Geneseo's side.
Yeah, that's a nice play, and you're right. It's always a hook and ladder is always fun. You gotta love that. So
yep.
Well, let's move into the Battle of Rock Island. Rock Island Rocks get the 47-6 win over Alleman. After a slow start to this one, Rock Island was holding a 7-6 lead, but then Rocky scores on 6 straight possessions to win the crosstown rivalry. A name we're very familiar with, Rocky star Quinterian Brooks had a pair of 58-yard rushing touchdowns, and he had a 68-yard pick six. So talk about doing great work on both sides of the ball. That's a kid having a big impact for the Rocks.
Yeah, as up and down as the season has been for Rock Island so far to start off, Quinterian Brooks has really been the constant. So another great game for him. Quarterback Connor DeLulio was 6 of 10 for 101 yards, 2 touchdowns passing, added 1 rushing. Here I'm gonna hopefully say your name right, young fella. Neogoshima Fiston, Joe Allen, and Darius Tongo, a name that we've talked about a lot, all scored for the Rocks as well. Let me tell you this, so Greg, I followed this game a little closer. You can tell that Alleman is playing a lot better. You can tell that they're so much better than they were last year. Still some mistakes, still some timely mistakes. But you talk about Andrew Torres, 135 yards on the ground and 26 carries, and he was the one who scored their lone touchdown. So again, they're going to have games like this year, but they're playing so much better than they did last year.
Yeah, I think on the Instant Reacts podcast, which I encourage everyone to go out and listen, that's the most recent episode you can go find right before this episode airs or is posted on any podcast platform. Anyway, in the Instant Reacts we recorded, Matt Randazzo was at this game, and he pointed out, and you can kind of see it the way it played out in the score, that Alleman really did a good job early in this one controlling the line. They were doing a good job up front. I think what you saw play out in this game is going to be a hard reality for Alleman in the Western Big Six, is that eventually they just get worn down and they don't have the same amount of players. They don't have the numbers to keep fresh bodies out there and kind of, getting on and off the field. And eventually your defense is going to get tired. And I think that's maybe what happened in this one when you saw the 6 straight possessions for Rock Island scoring. Certainly a Rock Island offense that's high powered. We know that. So, but credit to Alleman, because I think, Randazzo said as much as well. He said the same thing, that he thought they looked much improved in this one. So we'll see what they can do down the way. And if they, they play well and can keep things rolling, can they pull off an upset somewhere in the Western Big Six? But Mitch, talk about kind of what the fans were wearing at Rock Island, kind of a special emotional night there for the Rocks.
Yeah, it was a bit of an emotional night for Rock Island. Fans in attendance wore purple. They had custom T-shirts, and they released purple balloons, I believe, in the first quarter, to honor the late Alfonso Puckett. He was a former Rock Island student athlete who passed away unexpectedly earlier this week. And so this is part of a much bigger thing, that we like about doing this, is that the sense of community that high school football brings about. And you saw it there in Rock Island, pulling together for a former student athlete, for the family, coming together. So really, really cool to see for them.
Yeah, it's, certainly a great show of support by the community. And, our thoughts and prayers go to the Puckett family and to everyone in the Rock Island community, because that is something that's really hard to deal with and certainly hard to get through. And hopefully they can lean on each other, for strength in a tough situation. But good to see that show of support. Mitch, let's move into week number 4 in the Western Big Six. We got some games that, again, every week have some impact and could have some lasting impact down the road when you look at conference standings. Sterling goes on the road to Rock Island Alleman. You got Quincy hosting United Township, Geneseo hosting Galesburg, and the big one, Mitch, it's rivalry week. It's Rocky, it's Moline, it's Rock Island hosting the Maroons. I think we got to start there. We got to talk Rock Island Moline.
Yeah, talking about two teams with all the momentum coming off of big wins here in this week. So Moline maybe a bit of a tougher test in Galesburg, but also a much needed win for Rock Island, maybe a tune-up game of sorts for them to get into that flow that they've been looking for all year. So again, it doesn't matter if these teams were 0-3 coming into this game. It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football. It always is. I say that, but understanding what the result was last year, if you remember that game, Greg.
Yeah, I do. I do remember that. And I think a lot of people on either side, Moline fans remember it positively, and Rocky is probably trying to forget it. I think, fast forward, this is a different year. This is a new year. This is a new team. What can Rock Island do to slow down Moline's offense? I mean, we saw against Quincy what Moline was able to do on the ground. They clearly established themselves as a power football team on the ground that really could not be stopped by Quincy. Does Rock Island have an answer for that?
They're going to have to hope so. That was something that we talked about with Rock Island, where they've allowed, at least this was at the first two games, the last game last season, first game this year, where their defense was really a spot that needed to get cleaned up. They allowed a lot of points. Seems like they've been shoring that up little by little here this season, which is good because they're going to have to. They're going to have to be really strong on the front line, try and stop the really, really good Moline offensive line from opening up those holes for those running backs. So they're really going to have to, try and blitz, fill the gaps, whatever they need to do to stop that. For Moline, if that does happen, I think Grant Sibley could play a big role in this game too. If Rock Island's able to stop their ground game, and Sibley has to throw, I think he's shown that he's capable of doing that too. So I do expect this to be a game that is not 63 points difference as it was last year, but looking forward to it. I would give Moline the edge just on the way that they've been playing. But again, rivalry game, you never know. Rocky coming off a big win. Quintarion Brooks, always, going to be a bright spot, always going to be one of the best players on the field. So looking forward to it.
And I think if this Rock Island team continues to improve, man, they certainly don't need any more motivation. They're certainly hungry enough to eliminate what happened last year. So Quintarion Brooks and Connor DeUlio and Darius Tongo, that's a lot of weapons there that, Moline will have to answer for. And I think that's what we love about this. That's what's going to make a great Western Big Six showdown.
Yep.
So we got Sterling at Alleman, Quincy, United Township, Geneseo at Galesburg. The next one that stands out to me is Geneseo is at home against Galesburg. Don't get caught looking a week ahead to Sterling.
Right.
They're at home against Galesburg. You got to watch out for this. We just talked about Tristan Legate, Mikey Eicher, Amari Richardson. Don't get caught up looking ahead because Galesburg will come out and they'd get that upset win. They could potentially.
Yeah, this will be a good test to see, how good Geneseo is. They got the win week 1 against Noble. A game in week 2 they probably could have won. Don't want to say should have won, but maybe a game that they could have won against Grace Lake, and then obviously this week a nice one against UT. So again, another test here as Galesburg comes in, a really solid team. So, okay, like you said, can Geneseo stay focused? Can they get that third win of the year? Something that it took them last year a while to do. It took them a couple of weeks after going 2-0, and continue to play like we've seen them play all year.
Yep. The other matchup that I'm really looking at, United Township now has to go on the road to Quincy. So, man, you talk about a team that is hungry for a win. I don't know if I want to go as far as to say desperate for a win, but, man, they really need to get in the win column bad. They need to flip this script. It's a tough test to go on the road to a talented Quincy team. But, Mitch, we keep talking about it every week. United Township has the talent to grab these wins.
Yeah, two really good quarterbacks in this one, Matthew Kelly and Braden Little. So, and again, like we talked about, not really sure what Jarius Rice's status is going to be for Quincy. Obviously, he's a game changer, but they also proved that they can score without him. So, another big test for UT. They've had such a tough start to this year. Really good teams that they've played. But again, this is maybe an opportunity for them to pick up that first win.
Yep. Let's move into the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. Princeton will lead off with them. Mitch, they continue to roll along. They get the big 55-20 win over Hall. The 89th meeting between these schools, and the Tigers take the win. Mitch, a bit of a different strategy. Now, okay, but Stocking referenced this on Instant Reacts too. So was this actually a strategic thing, or was it just like the kick accidentally went short? Describe what we saw here.
Yeah, I think it's certainly intentional, and it's not an onside kick either. They're just kicking it short. And I didn't see video of how they do it per se, but they just kick it into a position where they can use their athleticism and their speed, because they have it across, their entire team, that they just recover these kickoffs. So they did it two times in a row on Friday night. They ended up scoring off of both of those. Greg, they were up 14-0, 2 minutes into the game.
Yeah, man, if you're Spring Valley Hall, you got to be looking around saying, like, what just happened? Like, we just got off the bus here and we're already down by 14. And that's what a good football team does to you, I suppose. So
yeah, nothing against Hall. It's just, this is what Princeton does. They're so fun to watch. Tegan Davis, another big game. He just announced today he committed to Eastern Illinois, so congrats to him. Not going to be the only player on that team committing to play college ball either. So really good Princeton team. They keep rolling.
Yeah, awesome to see that news from Tegan Davis. That's huge. Very talented quarterback, fun to watch. Mitch, speaking of talented quarterbacks, do we already have a View from the West Player of the Year candidate coming out as Peru St. Bede? The Bruins get the win 34-20 over Kewanee. Mitch, you've been talking up the Bruins. Give me the rundown here, because we got a potential Player of the Year candidate coming out of there.
Yeah, John Brady, Bruins quarterback. We talked a lot about him last year. Just continues to just his torrid start, I should say, to this season. He finished 23 of 34 for 269 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also ran for 40 yards and a touchdown. So adding everything up, I believe, I could be wrong, I think he's already at 11 touchdowns for the year. So just an incredible player. Doesn't do it alone, though. He's got a great supporting cast. Ben Wallace caught 8 passes for 136 yards and had 2 scores. He was the top target. Tom McCransky and Callan Hunenberg, also great games for St. Bede. So, and again, we're going to talk about this in a minute, I think, in the Mendota game and two in the Fulton Dupet game. This is a 1A team that just beat a 4A team.
Yeah, absolutely.
It did it pretty convincingly. And I know Kewanee's having it down here, but you're still talking about a huge gap in enrollment. So I think that's a testament to St. Bede, how well that they've been playing since last year. And this is a team that continues to impress me. And I think, again, depending on how the rest of the season plays out for them, they still got some tough games left. And depending how that 1A bracket's going to look, I do think this is a playoff team. And I do think that they will make a run. I'm saying that already because they haven't proven otherwise. They've just been so good this year.
Mitch, as someone who grew up in Ottawa and was around, playing St. Bede growing up, the name Tom McCransky is like the most St. Bede name of all time. Yeah. It's on the all names team, because that's just a name that you hear. I feel like them and Hall have a lot of similar names like that. So
right.
Anyway, getting back on track, have we talked about the Bruins defense yet?
We're about to. And again, you're talking about a really good Kewanee squad. Defensively, the Bruins held the Boilermakers to 109 rushing yards and forced 3 turnovers. So, they're doing it on both sides of the ball. But here's the stat, Greg. We talked about John Brady. Yeah, we've talked about his brother Ryan Brady in previous games too. 2 fumbles and an interception for him in this one, and he has picked up a pass in all 3 of their games so far. So you have 2. I don't want to say that Brady much. I'm not going to do it. But you have 2. You have 2 really good Brady brothers on both sides of the ball. Double whammy. Cool to see, and they keep rolling.
Man, you talk about just like a football family, man. They are locked in right now. Mitch, hey, we say look good, play good. Yep. The Bruins look pretty good too. They look the part as well. Let's go through these uniforms.
Yeah, it was about 1 a.m. my time last night when I was doing this last night, and I found some pictures of the game, and I just kind of thought that looks a little different. And we haven't confirmed it yet, but we're just going to say that they are new. An all black set for St. B. Never seen that before. Traditionally they're that dark forest green in either white pants or silver pants, whatever it may be. But this is a black set. It's got gold piping on the shoulders with like that darker green in the middle of the stripes, and then kind of the same thing on the knee pads, which is a different placement. I haven't seen too much on the pants. So still with their traditional green helmet. So it was a different look, nice look. And like you said, look good. You're going to play good. They did it here.
Yeah, I was, when I looked at it, I had to do a double take because I assumed it was that forest green or that dark green color that they always wear. But no, it was definitely black. So that's certainly a different look for them. But yeah, it looked pretty good. Yep. All right, Mitch, let's move along. Mendota gets the win 49-23 over Bureau Valley. Trojans got on the board in this one with a 1-yard run by JP Belmonte. That was 8 minutes left in the first quarter. They weren't done there. Certainly not. Anthony Childs scored on a 34-yard run. Isaac Smith returned a fumble 55 yards for a touchdown. Then Justin Randolph tossed a 23-yard touchdown pass to Braden Freeman to give the Trojans a 28-0 lead after one period. Mitch, that was pretty much all they needed there. They were going to run away with this one. A lot of standouts for Mendota in this one against Bureau Valley. They look good.
Yeah, I was seeing the updates on this one and just kept seeing Trojan touchdowns get added to the scoreboard. So good to see Mendota get the win here. Anthony Childs, as you mentioned, had 108 yards, 2 scores on 17 carries. Isaac Smith had 2 scores as well on 63 yards. Justin Randolph, 13 and 19. And again, Greg, that was a player who we kind of talked about. They had to replace quarterback this year for Mendota. Yep. That was going to be a big key to what their offense was going to look like. So he was 13 and 19, 205 yards in the touchdown. And Braden Freeman, as you mentioned, hauled in 5 passes, 93 yards and a touchdown. So great win for the Trojans. Good to see that offense really clicking.
Yeah, they moved to now 2-1 in 2-1 overall, and they're 1-0 in Three Rivers, Mississippi play. So a good start to the conference, good start to the season for them. Mitch, Bureau Valley, they're struggling a little bit. They did manage to put up some points in this one, but they were kind of trailing almost the whole way. They've played competitive, see if they can take that next step and get some wins here down the road. Let's go to Newman and Orion. Newman gets the win 13-12. This was a kind of a classic, traditional Newman toughness on a hard-fought road win against the Chargers. We saw in the Morrison game earlier this year, special teams, again for Newman, playing a huge role. Comets opened the scoring early in this one when Aiden Batten returned a 63-yard punt to the house for a 7-0 lead in the first quarter. Then they cling to a 7-6 lead early into the fourth quarter. A snap goes over the head of the Orion punter, recovered by Newman. Carter Rude scores on a 1-yard run. That would stretch the lead to 13-6. Orion would score with just over 2 minutes left in this one to be down by 1, but the Comets stopped the 2-point conversion. Then they recover the onside kick and ran out the clock. So a great effort from Newman. This was a battle on the road. An Orion team that we continue to talk about is improved from last year. They come up a little short in this one. Newman grinds it out and gets the win, though.
Yeah, like you said, special teams continues to be a bright spot for Newman here, getting the big punt return and getting the fumble recovery on the punt. But a traditional game here for Newman, just one of those grinded out games, hold on and win. I'm going to talk about it here in a little bit when we go through the week 4 previews. Still have some concern on Newman's offense, right? This is another game. Go back to the Morrison game, the Rock Ridge game, and now this game. That offense just has not put up a lot of points. The defense has been, kind of bailing them out a little bit. So that will be a little concerning for me, especially going into a St. Bede game. But again, you're talking wins at this point. They've got 2 of them, so this is a good win over a tough, like you said, tough Orion team.
Yeah, a good win for Newman. A close game in that one. Another close game on Saturday afternoon. Mitch, the Morrison Mustangs get the 18-16 win over Monmouth Roseville. Yeah. Mitch, I don't know how else to say it. This is a huge win for Morrison. This is a huge win for that program. They knock off the Titans. They were a 3A playoff team a year ago and a team that we've had pretty high hopes for. give credit to the Morrison Mustangs. They played really well, and they got the job done.
Yeah, they've played well this year, right? They had that. The score wouldn't indicate that against Newman, but Newman had a lot of those close yardage touchdowns. Played Newman tough, played Kewanee tough, a team even bigger than Monmouth Roseville. A 2-point loss there. Good to see them get a 2-point win here against Monmouth Roseville. So, but it was close, Greg. It was really close. Came down to the final play. Monmouth Roseville had a shot in the end zone from about the 15-yard line, knocked away. So good defense there in Morrison. Greg, we got some insider info from here about Morrison. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, so on Twitter, I reached out to our friend of the show, True Grit, on Twitter. Huge Morrison Mustang guy, like yourself, Mitch, a Morrison Mustang guy. He's excited and he has reason for optimism. And he goes into the details here. Morrison only has 4 seniors playing on this football team right now. So they're led by underclassmen, obviously, and almost the entire defense is underclassmen. They had freshman Brady Anderson starting at halfback in this game. He had several nice runs and a touchdown. Another touchdown by Carson Strating, who's a name we've talked about throughout the year. So this Morrison team is playing well. They're still young, but man, there's a lot of young talent there. And I think if they continue to improve and work on things throughout this year, I think there's a few more wins in their future. Are we looking at a 5-win potentially Morrison team? Are we looking at a playoff team here?
Well, it's possible. I think it is. They'll have a shot at it next week against Hall, which we'll get into it. Hall, a team that has shown that they're very capable of scoring points, a team that blew out Morrison last year, led by Matt Gracetich. So looking forward to that one, to seeing if Morrison can continue this momentum. Again, played really, really well. So good to see them get a win here. And let's hope, that this leads, like you said, down a path of getting a couple more wins and maybe eventually getting that 5th win.
Yep, one more game to cover from Saturday in the Three Rivers Conference. Erie Prophetstown gets the 35-28 win over Sherrard. The defending conference champion Panthers, they win their league opener. The Tigers do fall to 0-3, but Mitch, the Tigers were down at one point in this one. Sherrard was down at this one 28-7, and I give credit to Sherrard for battling back. And like we said, the game ends up 35-28, but man, to be down that much and to come back and get it close. I know moral victories are kind of tough at this point, but they've been competitive in all of their games so far. So certainly there are signs of improvement here. But again, let's talk about Erie Prophetstown. Senior running backs Tyler Ballard and Jace Grunder, they lead the way.
Yeah, it is seemingly week in and week out. We talk about the same names. So Grunder, another nice night for him. Nice day, I should say, on Saturday. 206 yards, 3 scores. I talk about John Brady's touchdowns. I'd love to know how many Grunder has, because he had 5 in the first week. And Tyler Ballard had 175 yards and 2 scores. So another good performance from Erie Prophetstown here, doing what they've been doing this season and kind of continuing on, their kind of that offensive identity from last year. A little bit different, don't have Colby Franks anymore, but they're still ground and pound, chewing up that clock, chewing up the yardage, and really good team once again.
Yeah, they do have new uniforms this year too, Mitch, by the way. Erie Prophetstown does. Yeah,
this is new.
Yeah,
they just got those other ones.
I don't know. They'd had them, I think, for a few years. But anyway, yeah, they got a new look too. I can't think exactly what the look is. I don't have the picture right in front of me, but maybe we'll have to get that out on Twitter as well.
I know we got some Erie Prophetstown listeners, so if anyone's out there, send us those uniforms. I'd love to see them.
Yep. Quickly before we wrap up, Sherrard, Holland Anderson was 12 for 24 passing, 145 yards. Carter Brown had 7 receptions for 119 yards. He also added 56 yards rushing on 8 carries. So again, the Sherrard team, yes, they're 0-3. But Mitch, you look at their final scores from this year, I'm going to give them a lot of credit here. There's good things happening there in Sherrard. I think keep fighting, and a win will come down the way for them. So Good luck to Coach Johnston and that crew. Rock Ridge gets the forfeit win over Riverdale. So that brings us into the week 4 matchups. Mitch, Bureau Valley is at Kewanee. St. Bede is hosting Sterling Newman. Princeton is at Mendota. Erie Prophetstown at Rock Ridge. Monmouth Roseville at Sherrard. And Hall at Morrison. So
Yeah.
I'll start with you, Mitch. You kind of laid it out here a little bit, a matchup you're interested in, but let's get into it.
Well, I'll tell you, looking at this lineup, I am intrigued by most of these games. They're all, they all have implications for each division. But yeah, the one I'm looking at, I think the marquee one of the week is going to be Newman going to St. Bede. And again, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. You have that dynamic offense from St. Bede going against a really stout Newman defense. The flip side of that, St. Bede has a dynamic defense against maybe, I don't want to say a strong Newman offense, but just an offense that hasn't put up a lot of points. So, this could very well bode well for either team and their playoff implications, certainly in their conference standings as well. I'm really looking forward to that one. Other than that, I look at a really good game from last year. Erie, Provincetown, and Rockridge, two really good offenses. Rockridge coming off of a bye week, Erie coming off of a nice win. So, yeah, there are some really good games here in the track lineup in week 4.
That Erie Provincetown Rockridge game from a year ago, one of the most fun games I've covered in a long time. That was a shootout. That was a ton of fun. That St. Bede Newman game really, really intrigues me for the points you brought up. Because I love a football team that can win close games, that can grind it out and get that win. Newman has showed they can do that. But I think my question becomes, how long can you rely on that special teams play to happen?
Right.
How long can you rely on the blocked punt or the return kick? Or eventually you got to put up a touchdown or two. And then if you do that, I really love Newman's chances with that defense. But you got to get there. You got to find a way to get the ball in the end zone, I think, offensively to really set the tone. St. Bede, man, they got to find a way to get around this Newman defense, which has proven to be pretty tough. So led by Mike LeMay, so no surprise.
Right.
But
right.
John Brady is one of the better weapons we've seen this year. So
right. And again, we talk about how good Newman's defense is. I just look back at that Rockridge game, right? They proved that they can be scored on. They have kind of shown the blueprint there. So can St. Bede follow that, or can Newman slow down that attack? So both teams have shown they're capable of doing either thing. So who will take advantage of that on Friday?
But I will say that game against Rockridge, it was only 6-0 at the half.
Right.
Newman was down 6-0. But even still, Newman had held Rockridge out of the end zone when Rockridge had several opportunities in the red zone, or at least close to the red zone. At least they had been driving downfield. So they did shut Rockridge out of the end zone several times leading up to that. And sure, it did open itself up a little bit in that game. Rockridge pulled away and looked really good. But for a half of football, for 3/4 of a game, Newman looked really tough on defense. So, and they did against Orion as well. So, Monmouth Roseville looking to bounce back against Sherrard. Sherrard, a team that we've said is playing well, but that's a tough test. Monmouth Roseville is very talented, like we've discussed. And Hall at Morrison. That's a game that was really interesting to me. Obviously, Morrison playing really well, coming off the big win. But man, Hall and Mac Resetich, does Morrison have what it takes to slow him down? And he's done some damage. So that's also, you're right. There's a lot of intriguing matchups here, Mitch. I will say that. So let's transition into the Lincoln Trail Conference. We're going to start with Knoxville getting the win over Stark County, 35-7. Mitch, we got to mention right off the bat, the uniforms for Stark County, wearing the red at home for the first time since 2003. That goes back to even before I was in the area. I remember that, but only from seeing highlights. Since my time covering Stark County, I've only seen the black at home. So it was a different look. It's cool. They're doing some different things this year. Unfortunately, uniforms aside, it was a tough night for Stark County. Knoxville kind of spoiled the party there. Jackson Johnson for the Blue Bullets went 95 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also threw a touchdown pass from 5 yards out. So talk about a dynamic weapon, having a little fun there and throwing the pass. Sawyer Tuckey added 11 rushes for 71 yards and a touchdown. So another great effort for Knoxville. Mitch, I don't know. We didn't expect them to miss a step, but they've done everything and more in this year.
Right. Yeah. They added some new names this year, graduated a lot of seniors, but it's same old Knoxville, right? So we've mentioned Jackson Johnson just about every week as the Blue Bullets are, remain undefeated here and looking to win back-to-back. Well, they were co-champs last year, but we'll just say for the sake of talking, looking to repeat again, looking to continue to be that top dog that we know they have been for the past couple seasons. So, the Blue Bullets keep on rolling.
Yep. On the defensive side of the ball, real quick, get in Oscar Young. He had 4 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and a sack. So great defensive effort from him. So Knoxville Blue Bullets continue to look good this year. Mitch, the Mercer County Golden Eagles also looked good. They get the win 28-0 over United. The Golden Eagles led the Storm 16-0 at halftime, and they didn't look back. They added 2 more scores in the third. They get the shutout win. Per WRMJ, Mercer County hit a major milestone on Friday night. They win their 600th game since 1910. So this includes the victories added in as the Aledo Green Dragons. So what an accomplishment. A program, no secret, one of the best programs in the area, in the state. Wow, what a milestone. 600 wins.
Yeah, if any of our listeners on the younger side are unaware of the Aledo Green Dragons, please look up on your history. An incredible program back in the day, one of the teams that you never wanted to face. We've talked about that with traditional programs on this show in the past, but Aledo I remember the first game I went to was Morrison Aledo, and I had that kind of mentality going into it, like, whoa, like we have to play Aledo. And sure enough, Aledo won. But it is a shame that they don't exist so low anymore, because it was such a cool team. But what an accomplishment here for the community, for the school. 600 wins. Also, Greg, Mercer County has never lost to United. 14-0 now.
That really surprised me. That one caught me off guard. I didn't know that one, I don't think. So
blame Brian Stocking if that's incorrect.
Yeah, there you go. Always blame Brian Stocking. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. A couple more games to get to here in the Lincoln Trail Conference. Anawan Wethersfield gets the 39-19 win over Princeville. Mitch, after a 60-point performance against West Hancock, this Titan offense continues to flex their muscle. They're now 3-0. They got a huge non-conference matchup in week 4. We'll get to that in a minute, but this Anawan Wethersfield team looks really good right now. Rova Williamsfield, they played a crossover game against Macomb from the Prairie Land. They unfortunately fall short in this one, 55-27. Mitch, I feel bad. I think I'm the jinx. I was excited about Rova Williamsfield. They were 2-0, and I show up and they lost. But anyway, still a lot here for this Rova Williamsfield team. This one crossover game certainly doesn't define their season. They're going to bounce back. They got a lot of wins ahead of them here this season, I believe. So, And one more to cover. A-Town gets the 49-0 win over West Carroll. So good for the Tornadoes to get their first victory of the season in a non-conference game against West Carroll from the NUIC. So into week 4, Mitch, in one of those Prairie Land crossovers, we have Stark County hosting Elmwood Brimfield. We have Princeville hosting Rova Williamsfield. We have United hosting Knoxville. Mercer County is hosting A-Town. And Mitch, the big non-conference game that I referenced, Anawan Wethersfield goes on the road to Ottawa Marquette. Yeah. Marquette is sitting at 3-0. They have a pretty impressive resume coming into this one. And Anawan Wethersfield also at 3-0. And they also look very good. That's the one that stands out to me. I know it's a non-conference game, but when you start looking at the Class 1A rankings, I know in our NUICfootball.com poll, both of them are in the top 10 deservedly. These are 2 really good 1A football teams squaring off.
Yeah, this will be an exciting matchup, no question about it. So looking forward to it. As you mentioned, maybe not so much conference implications here for Anawan Wethersfield or for Ottawa Marquette being an independent, but certainly a bit of a chess match type of thing when you're talking about playoffs. So I believe both of these teams will be in those 1A playoffs. And so will we see them again? It's possible. So 2 really good teams riding momentum. As you mentioned, both teams kind of rising in those 1A rankings that at least we do, and I'm sure they do for the state as well, because they're deservedly so. Outside of that game, Mercer County, A-Town is exciting based on what happened last year. That was a really, really exciting finish to that game, to that season. A-Town, bit of a down year. Mercer County really playing well. Knoxville and United, again, a team in Knoxville playing well. United, could show up in a game like that. They certainly have before. So Maybe not as intriguing as the track, not to take anything away from these games, but Anawan, Wethersfield, Ottawa, Marquette really is the spotlight here.
Yeah, I think the other one that stands out to me as far as games in the Lincoln Trail Conference, Roval Williams Field goes on the road to Princeville. So they stub their toe against Macomb, but now they got to bounce back and they get back into conference play. So like I said, you kind of ignore the Prairie Land crossover game. Sure, it certainly hurts. You want to win every game you go out there and play, but now everything's still in front of you as far as the Lincoln Trail standings are concerned. So you got a chance here to go up against the Princeville team that's reeling a little bit. They lost to Anawan Wethersfield, like we referenced. So can Roval Williams Field get back on track and kind of play that football they've been playing in the first couple weeks? I think that's a game that I certainly want to follow, see what happens there. And, for Knoxville and for Mercer County, it's against teams that have been struggling a little bit. United and A-Town don't look to be the same as they were a year ago. But it's like we said, you got to show up week in and week out. You can't lose an opportunity here. They can't look too far ahead or overlook anybody. Knoxville and Mercer County got to get the job done. So, see if they can do that, and we'll see how things play out. Mitch, let's get into the Northwest Upstate Illini. A huge game, a huge showdown in the NUIC. Fulton over Dupec 31-22. I don't know if I'd go as far as to call this game an upset, but when you start talking about a playoff team, a 3A playoff team in Dupec a year ago, Fulton is a 1A school, only their second year in the Northwest Upstate Illini. Mitch, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say this is kind of like Fulton's, program defining win in the Northwest Upstate Illini so far, right?
Yeah, I think so. You're talking about a really good team in Dupec, obviously. The defending conference champions, which anytime you're talking about the defending, a conference champion in the NUIC, you're talking about a really good football program. And then you add in that they're a bigger school. They're a 3A program, a really good 3A program. This is a huge win for Fulton.
Yep.
Again, if you want to call it an upset or you don't, I think maybe both are correct. Maybe surprising is more of a thing, but in a good way in terms of how good Fulton played and how well they stopped this Dupec attack, who we have talked about week in and week out. They are very dynamic, and Fulton showed that they're ready to play and they're ready to maybe ascend to that top spot. I mean, this was the first NUIC loss for Dupec in 2 years. So this is a really, really important game for Fulton, and again, kind of ascends them to the top to compete with Lee Win for not only the NUIC title, but really be a player in the 1A playoffs.
Yeah. For Dupec, Cooper Hoffman finishes with 184 total yards and 2 touchdowns. So he looks great. AJ Mulcahy, I believe, had a great game. He continues to look good, but I give a ton of credit to the Steamer team, and head coach Patrick Lower really has this team playing well, has this team poised to win every game they show up at. And that's a huge credit. You have to do that in the NUIC. And right now they look great. And that's a huge win for that program.
Yeah, and this was such a kind of a different dynamic of a game from last season. Dupec beat Fulton, I think it was 38-24, and just kind of showed their dominance, right? Their offensive line really opened up the holes for AJ Mulcahy, and Fulton just shored that up and really played well and kind of returned it back to Dupec. So, yeah, great win for Fulton. I'm really excited to see the rest of their 6 games here in the regular season. And I don't know what week they play Lena, but really looking forward to that, because now that game becomes even more important.
Yep. I'll look that up in a second. But speaking of Lena Winslow, they get the win over Galena 46-0. Again, we've seen this in weeks past, Mitch. The Panthers controlled this one from start to finish. Gage Dunker with 104 yards, 3 touchdowns. Gunnar Lobdell with 166 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's a name we hadn't really called out yet this year. So it was nice to see him get a lot of carries and come away with a lot of yardage in a big game. Lee Win has now outscored their opponents 156-30. So they are rolling right along, Mitch. They look really good.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Lobdell, a transfer from Orangeville, in a loaded backfield, right? And so you in a game here against Galena, you finally see him pop up on the stat sheet. He had been there, right? It was just between the Dunkers, the Zeals, maybe his numbers just didn't pop off as much, but here they certainly do, as mentioned, 166 yards and 2 scores. So, just another weapon that Lena Winslow has.
Yeah. Well, Mitch, it's not week 4, but I knew it was coming up. Week 5, Lena Winslow and Fulton going up against each other.
Where's it at?
It is at Lena Winslow.
Oh, I was going to say, if it was in Fulton, you might have had a shot to cover it. I don't know that.
I know.
That Daz will send you up to Lena, but
we'll see.
What
maybe
a game that'll be.
Yeah, maybe that'd be a long road trip on a Friday night. But I could probably run into Kyle Kampmeyer if I went out that far. Maybe.
Yeah, right. So. Yep. Give him a camera. Right.
Yeah. All right. Dakota gets the win, 34-20 over Stockton. Indians moved to 2-1 with a comeback victory. Adrian Arellano had a big night for Dakota, rushing for 110 yards, 1 touchdown on only 6 carries. So great, efficient work for him. He also caught 3 passes for 96 yards and 2 more touchdowns. So he is really playing great for Dakota.
Yeah.
Mitch, we had Thomas Bowman added 80 yards on 19 carries and a touchdown. Caden Niedermeyer rushed for 68 yards and a touchdown. Stockton got 112 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns from Carl Hubb, a name we've called out for Stockton. So this was one of those games that I looked at and thought it's pretty important for both of these teams who could come away with the win. And Dakota looked good here. They rally back and they get the win.
Yeah, like you just kind of mentioned, it did go back and forth for a little while. So credit to Dan Sheets, Coach Dan Sheets there in Dakota. And all those names we just mentioned, they're scoring in a lot of different ways, whether it's on the ground, through the air, with different players. So really nice versatile attack here from the Indians and a good win.
They will play Forreston next week, that being Dakota. We'll get to Forreston. They got the win 34-21 over Eastland Pearl City. Mitch, tell me about your guy.
My guy, again, I have no idea this is how he pronounces his name, but we're just going with it. Johnny Cobbler, 137 yards and a pair of scores. Greg, this is a tight battle. EPC maybe hasn't had that sort of resume that they've been in close games. It's certainly against teams like Forreston, but they had closed this to, I think it was 28-21 late in the 4th. So, good for the Wildcats showing some fight here, because I had my eyes on this one as the updates were coming in, but Forreston does pull away and move to 2-1. So again, good win for Forreston, putting up the points as they normally do, and they move on.
Yep. One more game we covered already. A-Town got the win 49-0 over West Carroll. So credit to them for getting the first victory of the season for the Tornadoes. Week 4, Mitch, here we are. Lena Winslow at West Carroll. Dupec is hosting Eastland Pearl City. Galena is hosting Stockton. Forreston is at Dakota. And then the really interesting one.
Yeah.
Fulton, I believe, is Fulton at home in this one? Yes.
I do not. I think so.
Fulton, so. Yeah, Fulton is at home against Muskegon Catholic Central. So let's start with the big non-conference game for the Steamers. They get the huge win over Dupec, and this game looks like equally a challenge with this Muskegon Catholic Central team out of Wisconsin.
Yeah, this is a very prominent program there in Wisconsin. Obviously, we don't always know a lot about these out-of-state opponents. We don't know much about the state, the talent level of Michigan football compared to Illinois. We're certainly about to find out. But boy, they've got the resume coming off of back-to-back quarterfinal losses in Division 6 in Michigan. That's about Class 3A, so they are a bigger school than Fulton. This is what really stands out, right? 6 state titles since 2006. They've got 13 in school history. That's like,
yeah.
Who? Joliet Catholic, Rochester, all those big names here in Illinois. This is a very, very good team in Michigan.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of like Alena Winslow, right? Pretty close. Yeah. So, yeah, I said Wisconsin. You're right. It's Michigan, Muskegon Catholic Central out of Michigan. So, yeah, what a matchup. Back-to-back weeks they have. They have one against Dupec, which they got the win. Then they have this one. Then they have Lena Winslow. So they're in the middle of a gauntlet here, for Fulton. But hey, that's kind of what you love, man. That's why you play the game, is challenge yourself. And this Fulton Steamer team has shown that they have the talent to get the job done. They're coached well. So I'm really interested to see how this one goes for them.
Here's one thing I know for sure. They're going to look great. Great
Okay.
uniform there, Muskegon Catholic Central. Appears that they have a kind of a forest green and a gold kind of concept. So
Okay.
I don't know what year of these pictures I'm looking at, but look like a really nice Adidas set. So look like a really good football team. So should be a really nice uniform matchup regardless there in Fulton.
Well, Mitch, let's hope that they look great, but only play average. And then the Steamers come out and they look great and they play great and they come away with a huge win.
They could play great and it wouldn't matter the way Fulton's been playing. So, we'll, like I said, we don't always know what these out-of-state teams are going to look like, even with a resume like Muskegon Catholic, but looking forward to seeing this game on the field.
Let's go through the other games. Lena Winslow at West Carroll. Like we said, Dupec hosting Eastland Pearl City, Galena hosting Stockton, Forreston at Dakota. Mitch, which one stands out to you out of these games?
I think Forreston Dakota would be my next sort of game in the rankings here. Again, Dakota, who just came off a big win against Stockton, played really well. And a Forreston team that has, again, played well all year, battled against DPC. So, again, a game that is going to maybe separate some teams, or can Dakota maybe pull ahead in the rankings here? Not too many of those games here in the conference, kind of those standing, shifting type of games. But I think this is one moving forward.
I think the one that stands out to me is Galena and Stockton. Both teams sitting at 1-2 right now. So they're certainly hungry for a win, adding, as many wins as possible to try to reach that 5-win mark. This game becomes absolutely critical. When you start looking down the way, they got to get this one. So I'm interested to see who can get that win. But Mitch, let's move into our 8-man ranks and maybe the game of the week. We say this a lot about the 8-man division. Yeah. This one may be the game of the year, though. Holy cow, an instant classic in Amboy. Number 1 versus number 2 in 8-man football. We've already seen a matchup like this once this year. This time it's Amboy getting the win over Milledgeville. 40, let's see. No, that score is
40-36.
40-36. There we go. It says 26 in our notes.
Yep,
40-36.
Yeah.
Okay. The Clippers erase a 10-point deficit to grab the win in this one. Mitch, Cody Cutter was covering this game for Sauk Valley Media. He's been around the area covering games for 15 plus years, said it was one of the best games he's ever covered. So to me, that carries a lot because he's seen a lot of good football.
Yeah, it sure does. I was just thinking about this, this is one of those games that we maybe even could have led the show with. But it's also on the side hand, we're saving the best for last because this was an instant classic game of the year type of thing. A game where it's possible they see each other again, and you really hope that they do the way that this one played out.
Yeah, let's get through it. Let's go through it a little bit. This third quarter, a flurry of touchdowns, 3 touchdowns in 6 minutes of actual time. So in real time, it was about 6 minutes. It was about a minute of game time. You saw 3 touchdowns. Milledgeville's quarterback Connor Nye tied the game at 14 with 10 minutes to go in the quarter. 2-point conversion, put the Missiles up 16-14. Clipper junior Kyle Cook and his offensive line responded with a big burst through the Missiles line, 65-yard touchdown. That's just 12 seconds after Nye's score. That gave Amboy the leads 20-16. 2-point conversions, no good. Then 11 seconds after Cook's touchdown, Nye connects with Kason Johnson on the 60-yard touchdown. That puts Milledgeville back up 24-20. So, Mitch, what a wild series of events there, and we weren't done yet.
Yeah. Just speaking on that flurry that you just mentioned, it was funny as Corey Cutter's updates were coming in, you were wondering if you were reading it correctly, right? You had to look back at the timestamps and be like, boy, that's a lot of action there to unpack it. And like you said, 6 minutes of actual world time, and only just kind of looking at it under a minute, I think. So, or just at a minute. So yeah, unbelievable back and forth there. But yeah, as you mentioned, the Missiles kind of built up the 36-26 lead by the fourth. But they started to come back. This was a home game for Amboy, so this was where it gets exciting. Brennan Blaine hauled in a 57-yard touchdown reception. The 2-point conversion was good to draw that game to 36-34. On the next possession, Amboy defense comes up big, forces a turnover on downs, and they take the lead. Tucker Lindenmeyer, a name that we've talked about all season for Amboy, we talked all season last year, scrambles, calls his own number, puts the Missiles in the lead at 40-36.
Puts the Clippers in the lead.
Sorry, puts the Clippers in the lead.
Sorry.
Yeah. A game like this is hard to keep track. Puts the Clippers in the lead at 40-36. Still some time. And again, as we talked about in the third quarter, there's no such thing as, too little time, too much time here. Milledgeville gets the ball back, but it's 4 straight incompletions. That sealed the game for the Clippers. And again, capped an instant classic. Great game here.
Yeah, huge game. Credit to Amboy. We were excited about them to start the year off, but they've got some big marquee matchups under their belt already against Polo, River Ridge, and now Milledgeville, and they're only 3 games in. The resume is already there for this Clipper team. Quarterback Lindenmeyer, like you said, had a great game, threw for 225 yards, 10 of 17 passing. Brennan Blaine, again, his most targeted receiver, 116 of those yards. Lindenmeyer and Cook combined for the most Clipper rushes with 27 carries for 153 yards. On the flip side for Milledgeville, Connor Nye rushed for 95 yards. He was also 5 for 18 passing, 134 yards, 111 of those to Kason Johnson, a guy that has really made a name for himself this year and is playing really well. So what a game. It's one of those games that you leave thinking, man, you hate to see one team lose because they both battled so hard for this one.
Yeah, and shout out to Coach Roble there in Milledgeville. They've had some tough games this season, so I wouldn't take too much into their. Are they 1-2 now? I think
they're 2-1.
Okay, they were 2-1. Okay.
Yep.
Still battle tested early on this season, so I expect them to continue to play well, continue to rack up the wins. And again, like we mentioned, it's in 8-man. There's a lot of things that are possible, including rematches in the playoffs. And this would be one that would be very welcome, I think, for each team to play again, and for the fans, and for us to see another classic like this.
So Amboy gets the win over Milledgeville, but Milledgeville put up a fight. They were tested. They're going to be tested again next week, Mitch. We'll get to that matchup in a minute, but let's talk a little bit through the rest of the 8-man scores. West Central gets the win 66-34 over Ridgewood. Mitch, this was also a battle of unbeaten teams. West Central goes over 600 total team rushing yards. So, man, talk about doing work on the ground. That's even more than Moline, I think, ended up with.
Right.
So if you're doing that, you're doing something really well. I do want to say, Mitch, this West Central team is so good, and they have a presence on Twitter, but we can't ever find any stats or individual numbers. So if Coach Jason Kirby is listening, or if anybody from West Central can reach out to us, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter. Send us a message and let us know how we can get some weekly updates and find some player stats, and we'd certainly love to promote them.
Yeah, and that kind of goes division wide for 8-man, right? We tend to get them for Amboy and Milledgeville playing these games, but yeah, we'd love to keep expanding the coverage of this. Obviously, NUIC football does a great job, but yeah, anyone listening who is in the 8-man realm, please keep us involved on scores and stats. We'd love to keep promoting this because we think it's great. We think it's going to continue to be great and expand. So let's get some stats, some names, and let's promote it.
Yep. Polo gets the big win over St. Thomas More, 46-0. So great win there. Ackwen over Orangeville, 60-26. Flanagan Cornell Woodland over River Ridge, 20-16. Bushnell Prairie City over Galva, 57-24. South Beloit gets the win 62-8 over Rockford Christian Life. So let's move into week 4 slate for 8-man division. West Central goes on the road to Peoria Heights on Saturday. Ridgewood looks to bounce back against Scioto West Prairie. Ackwen goes on the road at River Ridge. This is the game I was ready to tease ahead earlier. Polo at Milledgeville. So Milledgeville and Polo doing, the Blacktop rivalry, I believe it's called.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah. So that's a long time rivalry there. Great to see that one back and playing on the 8-man stage. Milford at Amboy. So Milford's been playing well this year. They are, let's see, I believe Milford is 3-0. So another 3-0 matchup against Amboy in this one, or undefeated matchup, I should say. South Beloit on the road at Alden Hebron, and Galva on the road at Metro East Lutheran. So some great games in the 8-man ranks, but the one that stands out to me, that rivalry, Polo at Milledgeville.
Yeah, Polo, a team that's, lost to Amboy in a tough matchup earlier in the season. But like you just mentioned, nice win over a good St. Thomas More team, 46-0. So, Polo is the 2-time defending champs, right? So,
yeah,
they are still, despite their losses, I feel like they've kind of gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit, but they shouldn't be forgotten because it's a really good team. This will be an excellent matchup and a good test for Milledgeville. How do you respond from that emotional, tough, game against Amboy? Can you regroup? Can you refocus? Because you got another one coming in Polo. And what more can you say? This will be the marquee game of 8-man this week.
Yeah, that's the game I'm certainly looking forward to. You also look at, that Milford Amboy game.
Yep.
I think Amboy's played really well. Milford is 3-0. I think if they're Milford Cisna Park on the road at Amboy, if they come away with that win, that's an upset in my mind.
Yeah.
There's still they're still an undefeated team, but I think it's an upset if you go on the road and beat this Amboy team playing this well. That's an interesting game to follow.
Right. And again, kind of the same thing we talked about with Milledgeville. On the flip side for Amboy, can you stay focused after an emotional win, after an exhausting win, after a back and forth type of game? So both of those teams, interested to see how they respond in big games.
Yeah. Well, Mitch, let's look at some, stats and numbers and results from around the state. We like to keep our listeners from our western side of the state informed on what's going on everywhere. And Mitch, Rochelle had a huge game that you found in your research.
Yeah, Rochelle, not too far away from the viewing listening area.
Yep,
687 total yards in a 60-35 win over Johnsburg. They got a running back, Garrett Gensler, 15 carries for 362 yards with 5 scores in this one for the Hubs.
Yeah, that's some big time numbers there. Mitch, going to the smaller school side of things, the matchup that stood out to me, Ridgeview Lexington defeats Tri-Valley 21-16. Some may remember last year, Ridgeview Lexington was a semifinalist. They fell to Lena Winslow in Class 1A. Tri-Valley was a semifinalist in Class 2A. So talk about two teams with a lot of, playoff potential and doing really great work the last few years, meeting up against each other, and the 1A team, Ridgeview Lexington, coming away with the win. A few other scores, Mitch, we've been really impressed with Camp Point Central in Class 1A. They continue to roll. They get the win over Mendon Unity, 30-8. You also has Tuscola. They get the conference win over Oka Valley. They squeak by 28-25. So they also are undefeated. And like you just pointed out, Decatur St. Teresa gets the win over Central A&M. So Decatur St. Teresa once again looking the part. They're 3-0 this year. Few other games. IC Catholic gets the win. They're now 2-1 on the season. Wilmington gets the huge win over rival Cole City, 17-7. So big one there. Byron gets the win. Reed Custer looks really good. They got the win 53-0 over Lyle. So in that Class 3A level, this Reed Custer team looks like they're, ready to make some noise.
Yeah, and I think I saw Stillman Valley won again. They obviously had that big win over Byron in week 1. So I believe that traditional power in Stillman Valley still rolling along. Good to see them back.
Yep, absolutely. Mitch, we got anything else? Are we ready to roll into week 4 here?
I think that's it for us. I think we're ready to go. Another great week upcoming. And as we've kind of went through a lot of big matchups, a lot of, again, rivalry games. We talked about Moline and Rock Island. But again, we're going to see what Fulton's made of, bringing in that team from Michigan coming into town. in the Lincoln Trail, Annawan Wethersfield. How good are they going to stack up against probably their toughest game of the season in Ottawa Marquette? Three Rivers, lots of good matchups. Obviously, the one that we talked about, St. Bede and Newman, and then an 8-man. That's that Polo at Milledgeville and that Milford at Amboy. So we got really good matchups here across all of our conferences.
We got a lot of great matchups. Mitch, I'm excited for one. I'm headed back to Ottawa on Friday night. I'm going to see Annawan Wethersfield go on the road to Marquette. I'm excited to be there. Obviously, no secret. Marquette's my alma mater, so they're playing well right now. I've seen some game highlights via, the NFHS, but I'm excited to see them in person. I'm excited to see Annawan Wethersfield again because they looked really good in week 1. And so I think it's one of the better matchups you're going to see in Class 1A. I'm excited to see this one. And Mitch, I'm always excited to follow your amazing work on Twitter.
Yeah, another big night ahead, and we'll try and keep everyone updated as the scores come in. And again, as mentioned earlier, if you got them, and I'll always tweet out if we're looking for a score in particular. But if you got something, send it to us. We'll make sure to give you the credit for either being in attendance or tracking that score down. So, but it helps us. It helps. I'm sure it helps Stocking trying to gather all the scores for the broadcast. So it's a collective effort, and we appreciate it.
I do always appreciate, though, a panicked Brian Stocking tweet at like 9:55 saying, does anyone have this score?
And look, this is again what I was talking about before, where technology back in the day was not what it was. And so that would be Stocking on the phone at the time, trying to find scores, calling the pizza place, calling whomever, trying to get a score from the game that night. So
that's true.
People just won't understand what it was like back then, I guess, but that's also dating us a little bit in terms of technology.
That was back when TV was TV. Those were glory days. So, well, thank you to everyone. Mitch, thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good.
That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.